What is up? What is up? What is up? What is up? What is up, you guys? This is your girl, Natural. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, please hit the like and subscribe button, hit that bell so you know whenever I post video. It really, really, really helps out my little channel. So, guys, there's a lot to talk about in this edition of the Rundown. Before we get into it, I just, you know me. When I get on here, I just like to talk about stuff that I've been looking at. And I was on this Reddit thread that was raising the question of if our parents, meaning, me, I'm 31. So I'm talking about, people in their 40s to their 60s, depending on who you're talking to. You might talk to somebody who's 10 years younger than me, but I'm just specifically talking about people between their 40s and their 60s, 70s. My mom is 71. She's 40 years older than me. So, my mom had me when she was 40. But there was this question of if this older generation, and I say older with love, if they are more addicted to technology than younger people are. And you know what? This had me thinking, because I see a lot of people who are not millennials, who are not Gen Z, and they are totally addicted to technology. We many times have to pull my short little mama aside and give her little mini interventions about Candy Crush. I know y'all know what I'm talking about. But anyway, we have a lot of stuff we're going to talk about today, guys. We're going to talk about the rundown. Let's start with Biden in Europe. So as you guys probably know, and I'm just looking down here in my notes, as you guys probably know, Biden was in Europe. He visited both the UK to meet with Rishi Sunak and to meet with King Charles III. He also went to Lithuania, for the NATO conference, which, if you guys watch any of my other videos, if you're Sussex Squad, we talk about the squaddies on here all the time. And what was up with that backpack? What was up with that? What was going on with that? Do you guys know? If you know, just let me know, because it's just bizarre. Okay, if you guys don't know about it, let me just break this down for you, basically. So Biden arrived in the UK, and I don't want to go off on a tangent, but basically I have to give this backstory. There's long been this special relationship between the UK and the US. Now, that term was coined by Winston Churchill. Basically, that's just to say, we don't really like each other. It's like to say, we don't really want to be together, but we have to for diplomacy's sake, but we have different ways, different traditions. So we don't really necessarily voluntarily want to be here, but that's snobbery, Okay, I won't say snobbery. I'll say the stiff upper lip is usually more on the UK side. But anyway, people know that generally when comparing the UK and the US, and it's not anything to, get your panties in a bunch about. My husband's Portuguese. There's the same stereotype between Portuguese people and Brazilians. Portuguese people think Brazilians are a little liberal and out there, and Brazilians sometimes think that Portuguese people can be stuffy. It's that same thing, the US is a younger country, but it was born of the UK, and British people can sometimes think that Americans are too forward, too familiar, etc., etc. So, of course, when President Joe Biden arrived in the UK, he patted King Charles III on the back, because that is just a sign of empathy. It's just a sign of warmth. Doesn't mean that we have to have an orgy. Doesn't mean okay, let me stop. But no, seriously, it's it doesn't mean anything. It's just I'm acknowledging that you're a human and that I'm a human, and I'm just saying hello. And King Charles just looks so uncomfortable. Anyway, I just thought that pat on the back was really, really, really weird. But I've got my notes here. So this is an article from NBC News. And this is entitled, Biden Meets with King Charles III and Rishi Sunak in Europe ahead of NATO. If you guys have any thoughts, go ahead and put them in the comments. And this is from NBC News on July the 10th, 2023. Oh, and by the way, happy Independence Day to any French people watching. Joyeux fête nationale. So, in London, President Joe Biden kicked off the first full day of his trip to Europe with a visit to London, where he met with British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and King Charles III. Okay, I'm going to pause there. You guys know when I talk about this stuff, I'm always pausing. I know, but I got to get my stuff in there. I got to get my comments in there. So, from my understanding, when there's these diplomatic visits, which, Okay, for me, and I was talking to my mom about this. Let me go ahead and get this out there. As a person of color, as a woman, let me go ahead and acknowledge that NATO, G7, all of those things, there's really not any presence of what the majority of the planet is made of. People of color, Black people. So let me just go ahead and put that out there. So, we keep having these contentious culture wars that turn into actual real wars, but we don't really have the representation that we need in here. And these meetings, it's like, oh, we're meeting about the war in Ukraine. We're meeting about climate change. And it's like, okay, first of all, I feel like these meetings should have happened like a long time ago, like a long, 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 long time ago. Like, anyway, so, and that's also, when you look at the news reporting on this type stuff, it's always so vague. And it's like, what did King Charles and Joe Biden talk about? That's like me over here. I'm like, what did they talk about? What did it, just please plainly tell me what they talked about. They're like, oh, they talked about climate change. What about climate change? People in the US, people in the UK are starving. People don't have jobs. Xenophobic and racist domestic terrorism things are happening every day, all the time. Police brutality, xenophobic attacks, misogynistic. Like, please tell me, like, is climate change the only thing you guys talk? Okay, anyway, we'll get to that. Okay, continuing on. So it says, the war in Ukraine topped the agenda for the Biden and Sunak ahead of a key NATO meeting in Vilnius. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Vilnius, Lithuania's capital. Although Biden has said the war will need to end before the alliance can consider asking Kiev to join. Now, let me go ahead and say, this is a little bit of an older article. It's basically since been established that it's not the time for the Ukraine to join NATO. I could have told you that. I mean, from what I just voiced just a second ago, you really think that NATO's going to just let in, Eastern European country that doesn't really have any money because Russia waged a war on them? No, this is not the way this narcissistic, mean world works. I mean, of course not. They can do as much posturing and genuflecting like they actually considered letting Ukraine enter, but no, they don't let the little guys get power like that. Come on. Anyway, okay. It says the meeting comes after the Pentagon announced the United States would provide cluster munitions to Ukraine to boost its military in the fight against Russia, a move Sunak has made clear he disapproved of. And, I'm wondering if Sunak really is disapproving of that, which something tells me he probably is. Like, genuinely, he actually disapproves of it. But I also know both in the US and the UK, they're having major problems of domestic terrorism striking up. Domestic terrorism, like, all kind of wrapped up as if it's just conservative views. But it's really not. It's really not. It's like autocratic, fascist type stuff, like, legitimately. Germany had a similar problem. Germany poured money into getting those mentalities on out. I really, really think the US and the UK should listen. Why is that related to Ukraine? Because those are the voices that are saying, you shouldn't be spending our money on those people over there. It just, anyway, okay, so it says what to know about Biden's Europe trip. One, Biden held talks with Sunak, during which the two leaders discussed the US's decision to send cluster munitions to Ukraine, a Downing Street spokesperson said. The United Kingdom is a signatory to a convention that discourages their use. And essentially, they came to the conclusion of, like, the UK was not necessarily on the side of that. But at the same time, you can't, as some of the richest nations in the world, they diplomatically can't just sit by and watch the Ukraine drowning. So it's like they had to. But at least Biden had the gall to step up a little bit faster, and be like, yo, we can't just let our Eastern European brethren, face a fiery demise over here. We've got to do something. So Biden also held his first meeting with King Charles since his coronation. Now, Success Squad, those of you who follow my videos about Meghan Markle and stuff, I want to know what you think about this, because I felt like it was definitely a statement that Joe Biden didn't come to King Charles's coronation. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Like Jill went and he didn't go. We know that Joe Biden went to Queen Elizabeth II's funeral. So I'm not completely sure. I'm not completely sure where the motivation was with that. But we know that when those, that thing happened, the paparazzi um, chasing the Sussexes, literally, like putting them in danger in New York, a lot of us think that that was sort of like them sending their goons. Anyway, so the much anticipated NATO summit is the centerpiece of the trip, which the alliance leaders will debate the war in Ukraine and revise plans for dealing with Russia aggression. An update on that, there was all this talk of Sweden. Oh, Sweden should be the next member of NATO. It turns out Finland was actually welcomed into NATO. But not Sweden, not yet. But I think that Sweden's probably going to be the next one. And for me, I'm kind of pretty much with that. I think that that's a good thing. But at the same time, I would love to see Nigeria in NATO, for example. I would love to see South Africa in NATO. Like, can we get some of the other leaders of the world who don't have pale skin? Because if you hadn't noticed, the black man and the brown man are burning out here. That's from the movie Fools Rush In, if you didn't notice. But yeah, it would be nice to get some representation in that. Anyway, so guys, tell me what you think about this. I basically think that nothing really came out of that of value for me. I mean, other than the Ukraine being protected. And from these moves, it really seems like the Ukraine is really making slow but steady moves with the help of these other NATO members to sort of fight back and reclaim their liberty from Russia and this war, the senseless war. War in any sense is always senseless, in my opinion. And I'm really, really glad that that's happening. I think that it's good in an indirect and small step sort of way that Finland is going to be joining NATO. Same thing for Sweden. I think it's going to strengthen the alliance. But at the same time, people literally cannot feed their children right now. Xenophobic, racist, misogynistic attacks are happening every hour on a daily basis. The Supreme Court in the United States just overturned affirmative action, like decades of hard civil rights work. Like stuff is happening outside of climate change, outside of the war in Ukraine. And I have all of my sympathy for the war in Ukraine. I'm not one of those people like, oh, you should be spending you shouldn't be spending my taxes on the war. No, that's not me. That's not me. But there is these divisive culture wars in this world we live in with this lack of emotional intelligence, this lack of empathy, this narcissistic world that we live in. And something needs to be done about that. Guys, let me know what you think in the comments. So, in other news, Britney Spears got slapped by somebody's security guard. I'm just not buying it. I'm not buying it. You guys know I love Britney Spears. I'm all the way team Britney Spears on this channel. So it's really, really weird because I watched the video over and over and over again. And basically what came out of this is people are saying Britney Spears slapped herself. Does that sound right? Britney Spears slapping herself. Okay, let me give you guys some background for those of you who don't know. Okay, so Britney Spears breaks silence on getting slapped by NBA player Victor. I have no idea how to pronounce this guy's last name. Wembanyama. Wembanyama. I hope I said that right. That is a cool last name. Victor Wembanyama's security team. So it says, update 7/8. So this is July 7, 2023. It says, Britney Spears addressed the incident in a second social media note. She says, I've been working, and for those of you, okay, so this is kind of like a follow-up. For those of you who didn't see the video, Britney Spears and her husband were at a basketball game. And she saw one of the NBA players. He's a young guy, fresh into the team. And she wanted to go up to him and congratulate him. And as she's running up towards him, the guy's security guard does, well, bam, in her face. Well, push, in her face, right? Why? Why? Britney Spears is probably 140 pounds soaking wet. Maybe, probably closer to 120, 130. Why? Why was that necessary? And I'm really not buying that she slapped herself. To me, that sounds like when the police got there and they talked to the security guard, um, the security guard probably said, oh, she slapped herself to CYA, or through some sort of boys club, kind of inconsiderate, unempathetic exchange that they had, where they just tried to chalk this up as fast and efficiently as possible. They're probably just like, oh, she actually, I think she slapped herself, and then that just stuck, and then all the news stations took that, and that's what they went with. So I don't know, but I don't see Britney Spears slapping herself. Maybe that's just me. You guys let me know in the chat if you're watching here after. Let me know in the comments. Would Britney Spears slap herself? And apparently Twitter, social media doesn't think that Britney Spears slapped herself either. But okay, let's keep going. So this is what Britney Spears said. She says, I've been working in the industry for years, and I have been with some of the most famous people in the world. Not one time in my life has a security guard ever hit another person. She wrote via Instagram on Friday, July 7th. I'm not sharing this to be a victim. I simply get it. Honestly, my reaction was priceless. Bad? Yes. Okay, now let me pause there. So Britney Spears said her reaction was bad. So I'm assuming at the moment she probably really had a BF. She probably reacted with some anger, some anxiety. And I can imagine if you're just kind of like not expecting to get, slapped, like backhanded, I would imagine that would be kind of traumatic for just the average person. But considering everything that Britney Spears has been through, that would probably be doubly traumatic for her. I want to highlight, you guys know that I'm an empath, I'm a spiritual person. I really love to talk about energy and things like that, and keeping your energy straight. If you're not good in here, if you're not good in here, if you're not good with him up here, sometimes that can manifest in really terrible, terrible ways. And this is a time right now in the US where it's like, shoot first, think later. Hit first, think later, Put out this transphobic, xenophobic, racist ad, misogynistic ad now, think later. Pass this terrible, terrible policy that is going to actually take mothers' lives, think later. That's like, I just feel like that's where we're at right now. So I honestly, and we also, ironically, are also in the age where people don't want to apologize. I don't know, when you were young and you would be on the playground and somebody hit you, but they wouldn't fess up to it. And you're crying to your mom, like, that person hit me. And they're just like gaslighting you. Like, I never hit you, when you know that they hit you. That's what we're seeing right now. It's like the day and age of narcissism, of lack of accountability. Where's the accountability from this guy? I don't see anywhere in here where he just said, you know what? I'm trained really to protect my charge. So in that moment, I just overreacted. I'm very sorry. I feel like 20 years ago, before social media, we could have actually done that. Even if that wasn't what happened in his heart, there was a time where we actually did things to be polite. If you hit someone, you apologize. Okay, anyway, so to move on. Britney goes on to say, I've had documentaries done. Sorry about that, guys. I've got a meeting, so I cannot stay on here very long. So Britney Spears goes on to say, I've had documentaries done about me, and none of which I approved. I have felt helpless in most situations, and my experience in Vegas and my reaction was a cry out on all levels. Spears noted that she is still a huge fan of Victor Wembanyama. It's not his fault. His security hit me. ... SHIT happens, she added. Says Britney Spears spoke out about the altercation that took place between her and NBA player Victor Wembanyama's security team. She goes on to say, traumatic experiences are not new to me, exactly what I was just saying, and I have had my fair share of them. I was not prepared for what happened to me last night. That's the other thing. In this hit first, think later. Shoot first, think later. Pass this policy first, think later. All of that. In this age that we live in, and I get it, this guy's a security guard. He's protecting his celebrity. He's protecting his person, his charge. But did he not think to turn around first and to see if this assailant was really an actual threat? You know, like, I just don't really understand it. So Spear, and he no, with no thoughts, you know, if he would have turned around, he probably would have seen that it was Britney Spears. And he maybe, if he would had some level or modicum of emotional intelligence, he would have thought, you know what, this woman has been through heck and back, you know, with her conservatorships, with her mental health. She's a survivor of the fact that she's here today at all and she can still tell her story. Maybe I shouldn't backhand her, you know, like, but that did not happen. So, so she goes on to say, one day after the incident, I recognized an athlete in my hotel lobby as I was heading to dinner. I later went to a restaurant at a different hotel and saw him again. I decided to approach him and congratulate him on his success. She went on to explain she literally tapped Wambanyama. Didn't punch him, didn't attack him, didn't pummel him. She tapped him to get his attention since the area was really loud. She says, I'm aware of the player's statement where he mentions I grabbed him from behind, but I simply tapped him on the shoulder. She continued, his security then backhanded me in the face without looking back. If you're going to backhand somebody, maybe look back. In front of a crowd, nearly knocking me down, causing my glasses to fall off my face. Spears explains she gets swarmed all the time. Now, this is where empathy really comes in, because even though Britney Spears is the victim here, she's still using her empathy-o-meter. She gets swarmed all the time. She's Britney freaking Spears. She's the queen of pop, princess of pop, however you want to call it. She says she was swarmed by a group of at least 20 fans in the past, you know, in her career, but the security team did not hit any of them. So, She said she wanted to use this instance. She didn't want to make a big deal out of it, essentially, but she wanted to use this as an instance to set an example to treat people with kindness. And we just seem to not live in that world where people want to treat people with kindness. So I wanted to read you what her husband, Sam Asghari, said, because for you other Britney heads, you know, whatever you want to call it, you guys who really like Britney Spears like me, a lot of internet sleuths have been extremely hostile and suspicious of Sam Asghari. When for me, you know, and I don't always have the popular opinion in the room, but nonetheless, I speak what is my truth. I've only seen Sam Asghari be a very, very devoted, caring, vigilant husband, supportive all the way. So I really don't understand when people come after him, especially, you know, for instance, I talk about Meghan Markle and Prince Harry on this channel a lot. You know, we, as far as the people who support Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, the guys who call ourselves Sussex Squaddies, however you want to call it, we really like the fact that Prince Harry stands up for his wife. When it comes to Britney Spears fans almost have the opposite effect. It seems like they are inherently and instinctually very, very suspicious of Sam. And I really don't think that it's fair. I don't think that he's really given much for me to see. Not yet that he is someone who is bad for her. But I want to read to you what he said. If I can find it. Well, maybe it wasn't in this article. Oh, wait, here it is. Okay. So Sam says, I am opposed to violence in any form, especially without justification, in the defense of yourself or someone else who is unable to defend themselves. Again, Britney Spears is like half the height of all these dudes. I've seen the pictures. She literally, she looks like a child next to these basketball players. He penned on his Instagram story on Thursday. Self-defense can be unavoidable, but the defense of any woman, especially my wife, is not debatable. I love that right there. I love that. He goes on to say, I consider my reaction subdued, considering what occurred, and I hope the man in question learns a lesson and changes his disregard for women. Thank you for your support. I love that, guys. I love that. And I really think that I hope that people will show more face to Britney Spears. I hope that they really will take into consideration with empathy all that she's been through. And in general, it doesn't even have to be Britney Spears. Even if that was like, imagine if that was my like 70-year-old mom behind this basketball player tapping him on the shoulder. Is a security guard going to slap my 70-year-old mom? It's just like, I really don't understand it. Anyway, in other news, Donald Trump, more and more accountability. I'm so happy. So this is an article from Associated Press. It says a grand jury sworn in Tuesday could decide whether Trump is charged over Georgia's 2020 election. You see that? Narcissism, egomaniacs, sadists, all of these things that make up the elites that hold the bulk of power in these Western countries. It's starting to slowly come under accountability. And you know what? Georgia is the state that I grew up in. To see the insidious way that Trump's administration tinkered with voter registration, for example, which if you want to know about that, check out the 1619 Project, as I said before. The fact that they were literally trying to have senior citizens who were essentially immobile rerouted to districts outside of their own, and these were mostly African-American people. This shows you that there was literally motive there to keep certain people from voting. It is disgusting. It leaves such a horrendous taste in my mouth, and I'm so happy that accountability is happening. Guys, I do want to say this. You know, there was the civil rights movement of the 1960s, and that brought about great prosperity and unity in the 1970s. And in the 1980s, we had the Reagan era. We had the Reagan era. We had the Reagan era, and we had the war on drugs, and we had the AIDS, HIV pandemic. And in the 90s, we had another era of unity and diversity and prosperity. You know, we've hit one of those division times again. And I think young people of color, young marginalized groups are just waking up a little bit. I'm not going to say that millennials and Gen Z dropped the ball, but if you are, say, between the ages of 18 and 35 right now, you're around my age or a little bit older, a little bit younger, it is important. It is so important for us to never be silenced, because what we're seeing right now is sort of, in my opinion, it is a symptom of us kind of sitting around and thinking, oh, it'll go away. It doesn't go away. Narcissist, and just you better believe it, Donald Trump, the orange man, is a narcissist as an individual, but narcissists are also institutions. They are the institutions that we operate in every day. And when they are corrupt, they will keep going. They will keep going until they're stopped. Now, I don't want to paint Donald Trump as a horrible person from the core of who he is. I think that he's someone who is extremely damaged, like most narcissists. You know, we look at these people and we see them as power hungry, manipulative, sadistic, unempathetic, and we automatically just think, oh, okay, a person is either good or they're bad. You know, I think that good and bad can definitely be wrapped up in the same person. But I think that usually narcissists, there's some foundational things that usually traces back to their childhood that got them to the place. And for me, the same thing goes to narcissistic institutions, aka all the institutions that we in the Western world operate in. They're all racist, they're all misogynist, because that's basically where we come from. We're coming from that part of human history, you know? There's no way around it, but we have something that we can do about it today. So guys out there, don't let yourself be silenced. So this article from Associated Press is by Kate Brumbach. It says Atlanta, a grand jury that was sworn in Tuesday in Atlanta will likely consider whether criminal charges are appropriate for former President Donald Trump or his Republican allies for their efforts to overturn his 2020 election loss in Georgia. It goes on to say, Fulton County District Attorney Fannie Willis, whoop, whoop, has been investigating since shortly after Trump called Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger in early 2021 and suggested the state's top election official could help him find, I need 11,780 votes. That's exactly the way that he said it too. Just enough needed to beat Democrat Joe Biden. So I really, really hope that all of these indictments and stuff, I hope that they come to a head before 2024. You know, please, please, please vote blue in 2024. Now, in other news about other crazy, crazy Republicans, you know, I think that there are some good Republicans out there, but they definitely seem to be the minority right now. Very, very sadly, most Republicans that I see represented on the news, in popular culture, on social media, they have sadly been swept up by this wave of culture wars. And it's very, very sad to see. It's like, guys, let's get back to when government focuses on policy for healthcare, education, taxes, stuff like that. Not people's bodies, not gender pronouns. Like, it's okay. We just want to help you out. So this is an article from NBC News. Ron DeSantis defends video going after Trump on LGBTQ issues. Totally fair game. This article is from Alec Hernandez. And this is from July 6th, 2023. Now, before we read this, I do want to say to you guys, what's really, really weird to me is that in this commercial, if you hadn't seen it, check it out because, you know, I've said many, many times in the past 15 years, the country I grew up in is unrecognizable. I don't recognize, I'm sorry, not the past 15 years, past 10 years. This is unrecognizable to me. You know, I can't imagine a campaign ad like this coming out back in the 90s, before the days of social media, in other words. It's given people this big set of cojones, and it's not good. It's not a good look. And while he's attacking the left media, the lefties, the wokies, you know, he has like, you know, some MSNBC host and stuff on there, you know, random, you know, Democratic host from channels, different channels and stuff on there. There's this heavy electronic music playing, which a lot of people have said is kind of, you know, for lack of better words, kind of gay, you know. And there is these montages of really crazy, sadistic, scary, to quite be honest, scary television and film characters like American Psycho, the guy from American Psycho. I think some of the people from Peaky Blinders were in there. I can't remember specifically, but I know American Psycho was in there. And basically, what you're getting from this depiction, what you're getting from this is that DeSatan is saying it's a good thing that he's acting like a psychopath, a sadistic psychopath who wants to see transgender and LGBTQ people suffer. You know, like you can have, I think it was a governor. I'm not completely sure if he was a senator or a governor, but you can have a politician get on the air and say, I don't see white supremacists as white supremacists. I call them Americans. But you guys don't see LGBTQ people as Americans? You don't see that they have enough, I don't know, they don't have enough merit to just be treated with respect. It was horrendous, that commercial. Anyway, so the article goes, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis defended a controversial video Wednesday that went after former President Donald Trump over LGBTQ rights and was shared by his campaign, identifying Donald Trump as really being a pioneer in injecting gender ideology into the mainstream, where he is having men compete against women in his beauty pageants. I think that's totally fair game because he's now campaigning saying the opposite. Well, first of all, of course, he's saying the opposite because he's a liar. That's what liars do. they contradict themselves. And let me straighten that out. There is a difference between saying something and being incorrect, or saying something and being insensitive and coming back later and apologizing and saying, oh, I was wrong. I've learned this, I've gathered this data, or I've talked to this person, I've gotten this perspective, et cetera, et cetera. There's a difference between that, correcting your faults, and just lying, just being hypocritical. Anyway, so it says DeSantis told this to conservative commentator Tomi Lahren in an interview for her streaming show, Tomi Lahren is Fearless. This is what he told to about because he's now saying campaigning, saying the opposite. That's who DeSantis said to. So it says they were his first public comments on the video. A desperate DeSantis campaign with a flailing candidate in his last throes of relevancy, Trump campaign spokesperson Stephen Chung said when he was asked for comment on the remarks by DeSantis, one of his rivals for the 2024 GOP presidential nomination. There's no, in the Republican Party, DeSantis, Trump, the only person I could really say, like Chris Christie, what's his name, Asa Hutchinson, those are the only two that I can actually say for me, are showing scruples. But everybody else, it's just kind of like infighting. That's the vibe that I'm getting. I mean, you guys let me know in the comments. Maybe I'm wrong. So it says the video, the transphobic campaign ad, shared on Twitter by DeSantis campaign's rapid response on Friday, attacks Trump from the right and portrays him as a booster of LGBTQ rights. Again, there are so many political analysts who say DeSantis is really only doing the things that he's doing because of there was a time when politicians did stuff because they cared about people, aka Obama, aka JFK, I can think of many. But there are also politicians, sadly, that we have to remember do things just because they see that number say that that's good. They see that number say that that's going to bring them more money, more success, more power. That's an example of what DeSantis is using. He's going further right than Trump. I mean, what? Okay. Anyway, what we want to win each other. So it says it features a clip of Trump saying he would do everything in my power to protect our LGBTQ citizens in a speech at the 2016 Republican National Convention. Pause there. We know that he was just saying that to get votes. That's literally it. It's like people who act super perfect to get the job, and then they get in the job and they are lazy and they do absolutely nothing and they drink on the job and all kinds of crazy stuff. He just did that to get the votes, which took place shortly after the mass shooting at Pulse, a gay nightclub in Orlando in DeSantis' own state. Let me pause that there. LGBTQ people are American. Black people are American. Brown people are American. Women are American. No one deserves this violence. No one. And if you are promoting that in the way that DeSantis is, truly, you're a reprehensible human being, because there are vulnerable people out there. There are vulnerable people who really, let's be real honest, there are people in the U.S. right now who are suffering because the U.S. is losing billions of dollars every year by not integrating diversity. Those same brown, LGBTQ, minority people that we just talked about, those women, the ones who are not getting the jobs because it's being passed over for essentially white men. Yeah, America is suffering because of that. You can't take a pie and give 70% of the pie to one group and then 25% to a little bit of a lesser group and then give 5% to the rest of the people. It's not sustainable. And so there are people, Black, white, Latino, Asian, all types of people dealing with the real implications of that. They can't pay their bills. They can't go to the doctor. They can't go to the hospital. And they need somebody to be angry at. And DeSantis is telling them, oh, well, be angry at transgender people. And so in turn, they're taking, I mean, it's not right. It's reprehensible. And it's not, I mean, any politician who is going to do something like this to boost numbers and not remember that he's talking with people. These are people. They don't deserve public office. So it says the second part of the video attempts to depict DeSantis as a more masculine figure, showing headlines of his action restricting LGBTQ rights, accompanied by pumping music and photos of muscular men. It says Jenner made her disapproval clear in a reply, speaking of Caitlyn Jenner, made her disapproval clear in a reply to the post on Twitter, writing Saturday morning, DeSantis has hit a new low. But he's so desperate, he'll do anything to get ahead, and that's been the theme of his campaign. Now, Caitlyn Jenner, I didn't love the way that she treated my girl Chris, all right? The other thing is I don't love her politics, but I am in full agreement with her here. So it says, this video has drawn criticism and some mockery from across the political spectrum. You know what? I mean, we can basically end it there. It's not right. LGBTQ people are Americans. You know, they don't really deserve to be attacked with that kind of hate. Okay, speaking more of trans rights, transphobia, LGBTQ. So, the LGBTQ movement. So, Bennie Carollo left the Young Turks. And you know what? I considered whether or not I wanted to talk about this one because it's a little bit of a touching one. And you know what? I do want to say that before I get into this, I don't consider myself perfect in this area. I'm still learning a lot. I'm still learning a lot about gender pronouns, to be honest. And so I might say the wrong thing, but I am open to learning, you know, and I think what we talked about earlier with the Britney Spears thing, you know, where this guy couldn't just literally apologize for slapping Britney. We live in this age where there's a huge amount of pride, you know, and if people call you out on something and say that you're wrong, especially people who have more insight into particular subjects, people will get defensive and they'll dig their heels in, you know, instead of saying, okay, what can you teach me? They'll dig their heels in. I am not one of those persons. So maybe I'll talk wrong about gender pronouns. Maybe I don't completely understand hormones or gender reassignment surgery. Maybe I don't completely understand the statistics around LGBTQ people and anxiety. But if I do say something wrong and someone corrects me, I'm open to hearing that. What Bennie essentially said and why he left the Young Turks, which a lot of people, honestly, when I looked online, a lot of people have been talking about them leaving the Young Turks and not really watching their content anymore because they think that they're somehow veering closer to the right. Bennie said that Shank and Anna basically were being transphobic, you know, and he would try to give them some insight. One of the biggest things was that Bennie had had a conversation with Anna about this Twitter post that she had made. And in this Twitter post, she said that she wanted to be called a birthing woman. Yes, that's where we are. She wanted to be called a birthing woman. Now, let me just put this clear. I like the Young Turks. I don't like cancel culture in the sense that it doesn't really make for consideration that human beings are human beings. We're not perfect. Some people make mistakes and people need to be aware of that. I'm not trying to say that to stick up for Shank or Anna in any way. I'm not trying to say that to stick up for Bennie in any way. But people sometimes make mistakes. People sometimes go off. People sometimes wig out. People sometimes break down, you know? And I think we all need to be a little bit sensitive of that. I wish there could have been like a mediator. I wish there could have just been like a mediator in the room with them to be like, Shank, Anna, Bennie wants to say that you're hurting him. Bennie, Shank and Anna want to say that they're not perfect and they're still learning about this. You know, it's like sometimes if we could just have that moment where people really just, you know, try to put themselves in someone else's shoes, but this isn't really the empathetic moment. And so Bennie took offense to what Anna was saying about that, about this birthing woman thing. Let me just say this. I kind of understand that from a perspective. I kind of understand that. But don't call me transphobic before we get into that. There is quite literally, just genetically, a difference between a transgender woman, and I am fully in support of the transgender community, fully in support of the LGBTQ community, okay? But there is a biological difference between a woman who was born with the ability to birth children and someone who was genetically born as a male who undergoes gender reassignment surgery, to become a female. There is a biological difference between that. And guys, I mean, I know this is a little bit TMI, but I'm going to go ahead and say this week I had a really annoying menstrual cycle, like just 30, well, I'm 31, but I've had my cycle for almost 2 decades, 2 decades of being clutched up to a, how do you call it? A heating pad, 2 decades of every month being clutched up to a heating pad, having to take Midol, your hormones being all over the place. Hi, Miss Lakiva. I love that. Thank you, Angel. But there's a difference between that, and I think that transgender people and the LGBTQ community is gonna have to be a little bit patient with that, with people coming from that place, people coming from that place of being like, yo, I didn't had a menstrual cycle for decades, and every menstrual cycle is hard, and it's painful, and it has my emotions all over the place. I've been watching reruns of Touched by an Angel on YouTube, and I'm like, at the breakdown of like one emotional moment, I'm like, and it's like that every month, every month. So I'm not saying that Anna, by saying I'm a birthing woman, was the most PC thing. I get that. But I think we all need to make concessions for one another. I think the LGBTQ community needs to be a little bit patient with, the hetero community, the cis community, however you want to call it, or just, people who don't have much insight into these new things. At the same time, I also think that Shank and Anna probably should have been a little bit more understanding as well. Now, Shank is a different situation. So Bennie had apparently taken issue with a lot of things that Shank had said on the Young Turks. And he said, hey, Shank, I'm not loving some of this stuff that you're saying. It almost sounds anti-trans. So can we just hop on a phone call? That's essentially what Bennie said to Shank. And Shank said, yeah, we can get to hop on the phone call. And on the phone call, that thing that I said that always happens, in this day and age that we live in, this non-emotionally intelligent, narcissistic age, stressful too. Instead of him saying, wow, I did not realize I hurt you, Bennie, I'm sorry. Instead of Shank saying that, which sometimes, I know that's hard to do, but sometimes that's all people need. You don't even have to say you're sorry. Sometimes people just need to hear, I hear you, I hear you. I hear you. But Shank didn't say that, okay? Shank got puffed up, essentially, and I'm paraphrasing here. I'm basically just summarizing for you. Not paraphrasing, I'm summarizing. But Shank got offended, as a lot of, I think, blue-blooded, I mean, not to say blue-blooded, even that I think is an archaic term. How do I want to say that? I'm married to a heterosexual man. That's just to say that I've seen it. I have heterosexual brothers. Sometimes that testosterone can just get in the way. And I think that testosterone with Shank got in the way. I think that he just, he wasn't feeling it, and he wasn't feeling it as in, I don't want to make concessions. I don't want to concede to your demands. I don't want to lose my position of power by saying, I'm sorry, I hurt you, which would have been the right thing to do, but he did not. And so Bennie was like, peace out, I'm gone. So I want to read to you guys what some of the people on Reddit are saying. So someone said, I am a trans woman. I looked up to Anna in my youth. This whole thing truly hurts. I can't lie. The Young Turks was the first place that exposed me, in parentheses, she says, gay kid, small town. To politics that didn't tell me I was broken for who I was. Quite painful to watch this develop. Now, I do want to go ahead and give this little piece of advice to the LGBTQ community as another marginalized, well, I won't say marginalized, a person from a minority group. Minority. I do that for a reason. Don't get your spirit too broken. You gotta keep going. You gotta keep fighting the good fight, because haters are always gonna be there. Narcissists are always gonna be there. And even well-intentioned, for all intents and purposes, good people who are on their soapbox, who have dug their heels in, and they can't concede to looking weak in their eyes to you, they're always gonna be there. So don't get too up in your feelings about this stuff. Keep on fighting the good fight, and never ever lower yourself to somebody else's low standards. You just got to keep on. You got to keep on trucking. So somebody else says, also to the enlightened centrist liberals that come to Anna and Shank's defense, even if they're not fascists, they're placating to them by refusing to listen to people on the left, particularly trans people like Bennie, who patiently corrected Anna and Shank on the science of trans issues, since this is really important for them. And for you liberals, please explain why it's okay for Anna to be cool with a transphobe like Jesse Singal, I'm sorry, I don't know who that is, and mentioning it on another enlightened centrist show like Adam and Stitch. F these guys too. So I didn't get all the references there, but I do know, I'm not loving how this person is being so kind of mean, for lack of better terms, mean in this enlightened. Yes. Oh, yes, yes, yes. Haters, they always want to see you fail, and it's hard. It's hard. It messes not only with just something physically with you, it's not going to hinder you physically. It's something that gets up in your spirit. And so I don't know. I definitely think that there is some dividing lines between the LGBTQ experience and with the African American experience, with the person of color experience in the United States. I don't think these are mutually exclusive, because, for example, arguably, you know what? I don't even know if I can say that, because arguably LGBTQ people have been around forever as well. Just like Black people have been around forever, LGBTQ people have probably been around forever. When we look in the animal kingdom, we see certain animals are asexual. We see certain animals are homosexual. Some certain animals are bisexual. We get it. So perhaps they have been around for very long as well. But on the massive genocidal scale, it hasn't exactly been the same. And so I don't think that the struggles are mutually exclusive. I think that some sort of Pan-African alliance needs to happen all around the world, so that brown people and people of color, Black people, we can sort of say, hey, we're people too. And I don't think that that goes absolutely in the same road as LGBTQ rights. I feel like they are side by side, but I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. But I do think that these two marginalized communities need to help each other remember that haters are always going to be there. Because if we didn't remember that, what's so funny? Like when I say I've been rewatching Touched by an Angel episodes on YouTube. Like there's this episode where there's literally the devil, the enemy is masqueraded as a white supremacist. It's season 2, episode 6 or something like that, 5 or 6. And Della Reese's character, there is this guy named Tim. He's a grown man now, and he's a part of this white supremacist group. But she was with him as an angel when he was younger, when he was a little boy. And she's like, I loved you, Tim. It's so dramatic. And of course, me, all hormonal, like, but it's like, I looked at that and I was like, dang, this was the early 90s. So that means this stuff that we're seeing today, it's not new. It's not new. And it's happening to all types of people who basically, for marginalized groups, LGBTQ, Black, brown, women, people who are from other countries, immigrants, and we just have to remember we're human beings. we come from a place of love and spirituality. Like, I don't, contrary to personal belief, I think that we have both good and bad, and we have the will to do those two things in us. But I think that we lean more towards good. When a baby comes into this world, they don't automatically hate, hate is taught to them. But that could just be me. Y'all let me know what you think. So things start out small, and before you know it, you are teaching the world and helping people. This is what you do on all of your I don't know about that. I don't know about that. But I am trying to spread some love. It's like, I just feel like my generation, they got some major burnout. It's like my generation has been dealing with racist, xenophobic, hate speech on social media for so long. And we are arguably the ones who have been on social media the longest, and so I feel like we just got like a hyper burnout state. And so when those figures like DeSantis, like Donald Trump, like, the Fox Newses and all that stuff got crazy, I feel like millennials kind of just said, I'm not here, and it's time for us to come out of that. We gotta pick the ball up. We gotta pick the ball up from the last generation. So I did want to speak from the perspective of some of the people who actually came from the opposite sort of perspective of Bennie, because there were some people in here who essentially said, if you have others taught in med school, many transformations. Okay, so here is one, for example. So this person says, it's actually a very real thing. And when he says it's actually a very real thing, let me think. He says it's a very real thing. It's specifically that few have and is not taught in med school. Many trans people need to inform willing to learn doctors to receive proper medication. It's bad enough some trans people get their own meds from out of the country because they can't get care. Now that's freaking sad. No matter what your beliefs are, every American deserves to be healthy. It says the transgender population is one of the most undeserved in healthcare. Not only do they face discrimination and stigma from society as a whole, they also have difficulty accessing transition-related care. This was weird. Somebody said, sorry to nitpick, but the title of this post should read Transformer TYT host. The way it reads is written now. It makes it seem like Bennie is no longer trans, but still currently at TYT. Yeah. Well, I don't know. And apparently Shank and Anna are both Christian, I believe. I'm Christian myself, but again, I don't think that that should mean hurting other people. Somebody says, LOL, if trans people are calling you anti-trans, I'd spend some time self-reflecting rather than deflecting and acting like everyone's crazy. Again, that just comes back to this age where we've dug our heels in. Yeah. I wanted to find it because there were some people here not coming necessarily from my perspective. They were coming a little bit further right from my perspective. But there are some people who essentially, okay, I guess I have to summarize it because I can't find it. How do I want to say this? And again, I am trying to be as sensitive as possible. So that's why I'm speaking so slow. And it's a new subject. So if you guys want to educate me, any LGBTQ people out there, if I'm being totally stupid, feel free to educate me. There are some perspectives on the right, and we are not talking about transphobia. That right here is not tolerated on this channel. And that's not even tolerated in this space. We're not even going to put that out into the universe. But I do think that there are some pretty sound minds, and I think Shank and Anna might actually be around that space, who are probably a little bit further right than people like Bennie Carollo himself, but aren't as right as Trump or DeSantis or people like that. Exactly. No one is better than anyone else. There are some people who they grew up in a very, for all intents and purposes, kind of traditional home, heterosexual home, and they feel like they can't speak. They feel like in the face of transgender people, of LGBTQ people, they feel like they can't speak. They feel like everything that they say is being judged, and they don't really know what to say. They just know that, hey, I'm a woman. I was born a woman. Hey, I'm a man. I was born a man. Why can't I just say that I'm a man? If I see you and I make a mistake and call you him, even though you refer to yourself as a her or a they, why can't you have a little bit of patience with me? Why can't you consider what it is that, my background and where I come from, and kind of have a little bit of patience for me? And there were some people in Reddit saying this. I wish I could have found it. But I mean, okay, so here, okay, listen to this. Somebody says, sure, carry on pretending the Young Turks is an enemy of the LGBTQ plus movement. Enjoy your made-up reality where people reasonably bringing up issues arising with the rise of awareness in LGBTQ plus community are actually the enemy. You are pathetic. This is not me, this is this user. You are pathetic and only give the right ammunition by being unreasonably unwilling to have a calm conversation about it. I don't like the way that this person is saying it. And in fact, I don't even like everything that they're saying. But right there where they're saying, try to have a reasonable conversation about it, even if somebody is ignorant, because, for example, Black people have been having to do that for a very long time. They've been having to live alongside the people who were the grandchildren of their oppressors, and sometimes quite literally their oppressors, and having to be gaslit, having to be, having all of their problems diminished, having to be called vulgar terms, and in turn still try to rationalize with this person and help them understand their perspective. And those types of conversations is what has gotten us from the 1950s, 1960s Jim Crow laws to where we are today. So I guess I'm not trying to defend the type of rhetoric that this person here is saying. He's just all in all being insensitive. He's being sarcastic. He's gaslighting. But at the same time, I think he is highlighting the fact that there needs to be more conversations and calm conversations between the cis community and the LGBTQ community to help people understand. And Anna and Shane could have been a little bit more understanding. I don't know. That's where I'm at with that one. But you guys got to let me know what you think. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, Lord. I closed out 2 tabs and I don't know how to reopen them. Okay. Anyway, in other news, here in Paris, you guys probably heard about it. There was a 17-year-old kid who was unalived by the police at a normal, just routine traffic stop. At a traffic stop. He was 17 years old. He was shot in the neck. Okay. And let me just say this. I live in France. I'm American. But that does not mean just because I live in France and I love it here, I love the people, and I feel in general right now, not right now, but in general, the mentality in France is very, very progressive. I do feel that really in my bones. And there's so much integration, it's just not like in the US, I literally in any neighborhood can walk down the street and I can see people from Togo next to people from Iran, next to people from France, next to people from Spain, next to people from Korea, laughing, having fun, from little kids all the way up to old people. There's so much beautiful diversity. It's that liberté, égalité, fraternité. Liberty, equality, fraternity. That is literally the slogan of the French government. And there's so much of that, there's so much of that spirit. There's another thing here. I often say it's very comparable to the US's contemptuous relationship with Mexico. You know, there's this thing where Mexicans can come to the US, they can give cheap labor, you know, they can be our housekeepers and our gardeners and our farmers. Oh, but when they start to come into higher echelons of society, when they start to get government representation, you know, or when they start to ask for just basic human rights, oh, no, 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 like that's too much. The same way that there is that stigma, that stereotype in the US between the Hispanics, you know, and the most ignorant of personalities will basically call any person Hispanic. You know, my husband's Portuguese. When we go to the US, there might be some ignorant person that might walk up to him talking about, hey, yo hablo, who knows? Who knows? But the thing is that people from all over, they could be Venezuelan, they could be from Brazil, you know, Mexican, like to the most bigoted of personalities. And some people, it's not 100% their fault. Some people, they just have stigmas that come back from generational racism, generational white supremacy. Like that's a real thing. I feel like in France, there's a similar thing, but between French people, and of course I mean French white people for the most part, but it can be all kinds of people, and Arabic speaking people. Guys, this is so sad to me because a lot of you all know I was raised Muslim, you know, and so I was raised around Muslims from all over the world. Even though I grew up in Atlanta, you know, when we would go to events, for example, when we go to Eid prayer, like there would be Muslims from Syria, there'd be Muslims from Saudi Arabia, like just the fact that there is this xenophobic thing here. It's very, very sad. It's almost somehow a mixture between the US's police brutality with blacks and the stereotypes and the stigmas placed on Hispanics in the US. And really, American people are probably going to be the ones who understand exactly what I mean about that on a visceral level. That I feel like is a close comparison, but not exactly the same. C'est pas tout à fait la même chose. Not exactly the same, but kind of along that route of this contemptuous relationship sometimes with law enforcement in France and with Arabic speaking communities. And so a lot of these police, especially, you know, I've said so many times, what's so insidious about Donald Trump is that when he came out with all of this, you know, stand by, stand down, you know, 24 people in ICE camps were unalived due to his negligence. January 6th, people are unalive because of his negligence. Life has been miserable for so many different kinds of people, Black people, brown people, LGBTQ people, because of this guy, because he basically signaled for white supremacists to just be okay, be out with it, you know? That reverberates around the world. That hatred reverberates around the world. And so this guy, I don't know, this cop, I don't know if he's having a bad day. I don't know what it was. But he asked for this kid's ID. He did not give him his ID. He's a kid, you know? Like, it's a routine traffic stop. He drove off. Yes, that was criminal act. It's so sad news. So sad, Miss Lakiba. It was a criminal act, but it was not a violent act. This was a non-violent offense, and it did not garner you taking someone's child's life. He shot this kid, I think once in the head, once in the neck. Don't quote me on that. I think it was once in the head and once on the neck. When this happened, my husband came home. I didn't even know about it. He said, baby, they burned everything. Sorry. I said, what? He said, I was like, what? He said, they burned everything. Now, this is the one thing that what's happening in the US cannot happen in France, because French people will burn ish down. They will burn public property, government property down. I had an article here, but we don't even really need to read it. They burn down trash cans. They burn down property at the mayor's office, at the city government buildings. They burn down boutiques. They burn vans. You know, they looted. They robbed stores. And I know I am not condoning that by any chance, but when you have kids from the projects. That's all they know. And especially when those kids are from West African countries and Arabic speaking countries. Everybody that they see, and what they call them in France is the cité. When everybody they see in the projects looks like them, and everybody who doesn't look like them don't live in the projects. And when they see police beating brutally people like this, and it's people who looks like them, they don't have education because they don't have the money to afford it. Their parents can't afford to send them to school, even though education is very inexpensive in France. Their parents don't even have the money to put food on the table. Their parents don't even have the respect in society to be considered like human beings. Oftentimes, when I'm on the train, I am the only person who will actually give money to Syrian refugees. And a Syrian refugee, that's not somebody who's living on Skid Row in Los Angeles, California, who at the very least can go to a homeless shelter, who at the very least has, what is it called? What's the insurance, the free insurance in California? They don't have that, you know? Syrian refugees are literally coming from war zones, you know? And you can't even take out one little coin to give to this person, let alone look at them. A lot of times, and this is not every French person, this is the most staunch, sort of closed person that you could think of, you know? They won't even look at these people. They consider them like lepers. Hi, Marshar. So Marshar says, unfortunately, racism is going to be everywhere because there will always be one race group who will think they are better than those whom they think are inferior to them. You're so right. And to see that in France is so heartbreaking because I really hope that vindictiveness, that evilness does not spread. And what's going to happen is those of us who have compassion in our hearts, hey, we're going to have to remember that. We're going to have to remember that. And now I'm going to highlight what Ms. Lakiva said a moment ago. No one is better than anyone else. No one is better than anyone else. That's basically what that comes to. But I was very, very sad to hear that news. Again, I think that, I think that everything that happens under the sun has some level of accountability. And that is not going to stay that way for forever. It's not going to stay that way for forever. There's no possibility because eventually change happens, whether it is happening from change agents, people like us who have I'm going to actually just go ahead and say the scruples, the gall to go ahead and go against stuff like that. But also just from people who don't want to see the world devolve into that stuff. And to go back to what I was saying, these kids, the reason they're burning stuff down, the reason they're looting, the reason they're doing all of that stuff, they don't have the education to go and write their parliamentary members. They don't have the education to actually themselves try and run for the National Assembly. They don't have the resources to help campaign for politicians who represent what it is that they want to see changed in society. Because generational systemic poverty is a thing. It happens all over the world. It's not just America, And so maybe looting and burning down cars, burning down government buildings is their only expression of that. And again, that is not to excuse bad behavior, but I think it is a call of action for us all across the Western world, but all parts of the world really, to just remember the most vulnerable parts of society. Remember that they're human beings and remember that they're people. I mean, we can't just let this go by. So, very, very last thing here, and then I've got to get off because I actually have a meeting. So you guys remember Clarence Thomas, our favorite self-hating, malignant, I don't know whether to call him a sadist or masochist. I think he might be both, honey. It's all twisted up in there. But anyway, basically, a civil rights group is suing Harvard. A civil rights group is suing Harvard, and I could have seen that coming. I could have seen that coming. You know why? Because you what is really in like so sinister and insidious is, like I said before, for like the past 5-10 years, you would see these nameless, faceless profiles come up in social media saying things like, oh, affirmative action should go away because Martin Luther King said that no person should be judged on the color of their skin, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, affirmative action should go away because we want to live in a colorblind society. And to look at that at face value, you might think, oh, well, that must be a person of color, because why would they be talking about Martin Luther King or colorblind? No, that is somebody else masquerading as something else. And so the thing about narcissists is you always poke holes in their logic. Their logic just never, ever adds up. And as we said, narcissists can be individuals. They can be institutions. So, okay, colorblind society. Okay, you should be judged on your merit. You should be judged on your qualifications. Okay, so why are there still the legacy admissions at Harvard? People whose parents went there. In other words, nepotism. That's essentially what nepotism means. How come they can still go to Harvard, but Harvard can't take into consideration the poor Black kid that grew up in the Bronx, but who was extremely freaking smart and who would otherwise have no reason or no ability to go to a place like Harvard? And of course, that's a hypothetical example, but that's real. That's real. There are people who live in marginalized groups who are Black, and Black people don't always get the same. The Watts riots. Yes. You know, I was talking to my mom about this yesterday, and it's so funny because I feel like my mom and my dad were they were like walking contradictions, because my mom followed Angela Davis and Malcolm X. She's so short and skinny, but she is like Black power, right? And my dad was like, oh, peace and love, man, groovy, blah, 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 you know? I feel like there's going to have to be within the Black community specifically. Now, affirmative action, we know it affected all types of marginalized groups. Again, I'm a Black woman. I'm a woman of color. I'm speaking from my specific perspective. And we know that affirmative action was originally, that was sort of enacted to help marginalized Black groups, right? I think what happened within the 60s and the 70s with the civil rights movement, this new manifestation that's coming alive today among Gen Y and millennials, I think that we're going to have to go individually with what our spirit calls us to do. Still to contribute to the cause of anti-racism, still to contribute to the cause of having Black people in America just be respected as human beings and be afforded all the same rights as whites as anybody else, and be afforded respect, at least enough respect to say, you basically built this country. Go ahead and take your proper seat in government, in middle management, in executive leadership. You know, if there's 13% Black people in America, 13% of universities, of jobs, all of that should basically be Black. At the very least, can we get up to 6%? You know, I feel like in order to do the social justice work to get there, you know, the Watts riots, myself personally, I would much rather go through the route of policy and advocacy, you know, of nonviolent advocacy to get to those things. But at the same time, sometimes the powers in place don't listen to that, you know. And so I understand why some people might be inclined to get violent. It's just like what we just talked about with France. I understand why those kids felt like that was all that they could do. It was like, if you ever been so mad, all you could do was just throw something across the room. You know, it was like that was literally all you could do. But after that, you felt a little bit better, you know, which I don't think anybody should be violent towards anyone. But I think that as within the Black community, people of color, within these Pan-African sort of alliances that we're forming, which social media is making possible, I think we all just need to reach into us, you know, and see what's the best way that I can join in with a community of like-minded people. And even though we'll have all of these little feeder POC groups and Pan-African groups and people of color and marginalized groups working for these different things, at the end of the day, the goal is the same, anti-racism, to have Black people have all the rights that should be afforded to them in America. But anyway, so I have this article. This is from the Los Angeles Times. It is entitled "Activists Spurred by Affirmative Action Ruling Sue Harvard Over Legacy Admissions." What's so funny? Oh, and this is by Colin Brinkley from July 3rd, 2023. What's so funny is I knew this was going to happen. Like, I just knew it. I already knew it. I knew that it was going to happen, and I was just waiting for it because there's hypocrisy written all over this. You're saying Black people shouldn't be able to go to a college because they're Black, but at the same time, you're saying rich people, mostly white rich people, should be able to go to Harvard because their family or their friends or somebody that they knew went to Harvard. It's like, how do you not see that that's critical? Anyway, so it says from Washington, a civil rights group is challenging legacy admissions at Harvard University, saying the practice discriminates against students of color by giving an unfair boost to mostly white children of alumni. It's the latest effort in a growing push against legacy admissions. The practice of giving admissions priority to children of alumni. Backlash against the practice has been building in the wake of last week's Supreme Court's decision ending affirmative action in college admissions. I really just want to know how Clarence Thomas can sleep at night. Looking at, I don't want to disparage anybody's looks, but as I said, my grandma, would often say how you feel on the inside is reflected on how you look on the outside. So maybe brother is not, I don't even know if I want to call him a brother. Maybe Clarence is not even sleeping at night. Lawyers for Civil Rights, a nonprofit based in Boston, filed a suit Monday on behalf of Black and Latino community groups in New England, alleging that Harvard's admission system violates the Civil Rights Acts. You see, this right here, for me, this falls in line with policy, with advocacy, with the law. I feel like that is really how Blacks and brown people can forge change. We got to use the rights game with them. Yes. So Marshall says Dr. King and Malcolm X showed us how to do things, and they showed them that Black people are a force that is powerful and will cause change. It had caused that change, so we can't allow it to go back. Girl, you are so right. Are you a girl? I'm sorry. I can't tell from your profile picture. I'm sorry. My boo, my love, okay? My sister, my brother, you are right. We can't. And, I don't think that millennials dropped the ball intentionally. I was talking to my mom about this. I don't think we dropped the ball intentionally. I think that things had gotten a lot better before they came to this point where they got so much worse, Like, I quite literally, me, myself, who's 31 years old, I really did not experience like overt racism until at least the age of 24. Okay, girl. Much love to you, Queen. I didn't experience racism until I was 24. Like the America I grew up in turned so fast. And again, I think it's with social media, but we can't let the ball drop, And even though social media has brought so much hate speech, so much, just negative stuff, negative, bad, narcissistic, abusive type stuff, I think it can also be used as a vehicle because so many of us are all over the country, all over the world, and we're still connected because of our values. So I think millennials might have intentionally dropped the ball a little bit, but following in the footsteps of Malcolm, of Martin Luther King, of Angela Davis, of Colson Whitehead, of so many different people, Gloria Steinem, of Bob Marley, of Andrew Jackson. There's so many that we can name. James Baldwin. What's her name? Marion Wright Edelman, John Lewis, Barack Obama, Kamala Harris. Like, I feel like we can follow in their footsteps. We just got to A, find the courage. B, we can't let ourselves be silenced. And this tool that we're so good at, social media, we got to use it for something other than Tinder. We got to use it for something other than Facebook and Instagram. So the article goes on to say, Why are we rewarding children for privileges and advantages accrued by prior generations? Said Ivan Espinoza Madrigal. I hope I pronounced that right. The group's executive director. Your family's last name and the size of your bank account are not a measure of merit and should have no bearing on college admission processes. I'm sorry, guys. I actually need to check my calendar. Okay, just making sure I'm not late. So it goes on to say, opponents say the practice is no longer defensible without affirmative action providing a counterbalance. The court's ruling says colleges must ignore the race of applicants, activists point out, but schools can still give a boost to children of alumni and donors. It goes on to conclude, a separate campaign is urging the alumni of 30 prestigious colleges to withhold donations. Ooh. You see, sometimes the only thing that'll make these people listen is money. It's so sad. To withhold donations until their schools end legacy admissions. Their initiative, led by the advocacy group Ed Mobilizer, also targets Harvard and other Ivy League schools. It's crazy, y'all. It is absolutely crazy. And for those of us who are spiritual, I think we're going to have to keep praying about it. I think that we're going to have to continue to advocate in whatever ways that is, good with our spirit. Protesting, advocacy policy, joining a group, joining a Facebook group, doing this, chatting on live chats on YouTube, whatever it is. I mean, we just got to keep going. Let me know what you guys think in the chat. Let me know what you think in the comments. I think that the world is just like spinning off its axis. And just like those narcissistic, sadistic leaders, those politicians who really, they won't take the hint that they need to go ahead and exit stage left as soon as possible. Somebody has to actually remove them. I think the same thing goes for this mentality. What do you guys think? I don't know. I really don't know. Yeah. But I do hope that wherever you guys are, whoever you are, yes, we're going to keep the good trouble. We're going to keep it. Wherever you are, whoever you are. I really hope that you are taking those steps to be well in your mind, body, and spirit, especially in your spirit in this day and age where people want to pretend like we aren't spiritual creatures and, oh, everything is logical, black and white, but it's to somebody else's logic. It's not to your logic. And if you don't conform to that, you are punished. Just remember that love that's inside of you, that love that resonates with other people. Love will solve it all. We're going to make it. I love to know what you guys think. If you guys are watching afterhand, please put your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe. That way you know whenever I post video. That really helps out my channel. I'll see you guys in the next edition of The Rundown. I hope that you guys have an amazing weekend. Take it easy. Don't let haters, don't let narcissists, don't let mean people, anybody get your spirit down. Like my granddad says, don't let anybody take your smile away. But I'm sending you guys much love. I will see you guys in the next video. Remember to like and subscribe. Love wins. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.